Hi, and welcome to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast presented by Wolf Precision Incorporated, where we learn about and share long range shooting and custom rifle building. I am your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. Hi, and welcome to episode 163 of Wolf Precision's Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. In this episode, we're going to dive into reloading and some common questions or common things that new reloaders get into and the value of training, whether it's online or in person. And sometimes just a simple concept is you can't get there from here. And trying to speak with some people that are into or learning about reloading, trying to talk about all the things that they're going to get into, always keeping into consideration safety, and sometimes just explaining to them that what you're trying is not going to work, and that there's a million things you have to know or that can go wrong or you have to be prepared for. And the things that you don't know or things that you don't know will get you in trouble. So we're going to talk about problem solving. We're going to talk about a lot of the little things that can get you in trouble into reloading, and then try to give you some solutions. This all came about from a gentleman who had called yesterday and was speaking with me over the phone. He did not buy a rifle from us new. He had found one of our rifles from years ago, and we had sent it in, give her a good clean bill of health, gave it a good scrubbing and cleaning, and off to the races it went, and he's shooting it, and he's getting into reloading. And so we're offering him some suggestions and help, and about 20, 25 minutes into the conversation, just trying to explain to him that you can't get there from here. So without further ado, ought to be a great podcast. Here we go. All right, before we get started, I do want to say a quick thank you to TriggerTech. TriggerTech is the maker of fine rifle triggers. They are made in the great Canadian North. They are probably, in our opinion, one of the safest triggers that you could possibly put in a rifle, whether it's for hunting or for tactical or for competition. Their roller pin or roller bearing system keeps that rifle from firing from slips and falls, slamming your rifle off something what we would consider like the FBI drop test, things that can get you in trouble. And it also is end user friendly. So you can install it yourself with just one screw to adjust in and out to adjust the pull weight. So if you're going to upgrade your rifle and you're going to do it with a trigger, we really suggest you go over and take a look at triggertech.com and all of the fine offerings they have, from single stage to two stage, to curved shoes, to straight shoes, to flat shoes. I mean, just really a great trigger making company and what we consider the best. So to learn more, stop over to triggertech.com. That's triggertech.com today. We'd also like to thank Krieger Barrels. Krieger is the maker of fine cut rifle barrels made in the great state of Wisconsin. They offer a new program called Krieger Direct, where you can log on and order your barrel and have it in as little as 2 to 3 business days. Now, that sounds quick, and it is, because if you order a barrel from scratch, their lead times can get out to 10 months to 12 months, and at one point, 18 months. So you can stop over to a new program called Krieger Direct, where they keep in-stock barrels and have them ready to ship out, and you can get them in as little as 2 to 3 business days. So if you're in the market for a custom barrel to make your rifle, you can stop over to KriegerDirect.com. That's KriegerDirect.com today. So this ought to be a really interesting podcast, because I'm hoping it comes across okay with good intentions, and I'm hoping that it spells out some of the misbeliefs as well as some of the things that just happen in reloading, that the internet and all the things that you read, the research that you do, the opinions that you find, this is a tough one, not only because there's a lot of problem solving when it comes to making ammunition, and there's a lot of things you have to do really well to make great ammunition, and there's a lot of things you really have to pay attention to make safe ammunition. And the laundry list just goes on and on and on as far as what the new reloader has to know. And the gentleman had called in and was asking about reloading, and he was getting a lot of speed, more speed than what he was expecting for the caliber that he was shooting. And so asking him sort of the standard questions of going over all of the things that he's doing. And I'll agree. He had a lot of speed. I wasn't crazy, but it was a lot more than what would be expected considering the caliber and his components selection. And so I started talking to him a little bit about his reloading background, how long you've been reloading. Then we got into probably 20 or 30 minutes of me just asking question after question. And I think after about 20 or 30 minutes, I think it dawned on both of us, especially the gentleman that had called in, that there's a lot to this. And it's not just, hey, here's what it probably is and go fix it, right? So, for example, it could be something as, what lot of powder do you have? Are you using IMR 4350 or Hodgkin's 4350? They're totally different powders, right? Different burn rates. Is it stored in an area where it can be dried out? So, if you're storing it in your gun safe, do you have a dehumidifier in there drawing all the moisture out of the powder? When you do that, you can increase the burn rate. We've talked to Hodgkin's about this in the past. There are other issues, like you hear people talking about using Magnum primers and all the things that they'll go about as to why you want to use a Magnum primer in whatever caliber it might be, non-Magnum caliber. Then you get into brass, right? Everything from, in this case, it was Lapilla brass, which is good quality brass for sure. But there's a ton of stuff that can cause pressure. Think about it. He could have a donut at the bottom of the case neck where it pinches the bullet in the chamber. So think about the brass going into the chamber, and there's a donut hidden on the inside. And as that brass gets squeezed into the neck area of the chamber, that closes in on that donut, pinching the bullet. So the chamber itself is pinching the bullet with the brass, this little donut or ring that's formed. Another thing that can happen, and we actually seen this year already, and this isn't uncommon at all, is that the brass, when it was trimmed, it had a big burr around the case mouth. So it was either trimmed too fast or with a dull cutter. Well, that big burr that stood up around the outside of the case mouth that you can feel with your fingernail, it's very pronounced, right? Well, we've seen customers not even be able to, here at the shooting school, close the round in their gun. So they're going to force the bolt closed, and it's like really hard to close. It's because it's got this giant burr around the end of the case mouth. And if you do force the bolt to be closed, or if it's just a big enough burr to pinch the bullet, again, you can get pressure spikes. So you're holding that bullet, you're not letting it go, and it's building more pressure before it actually lets loose. Another thing that can happen, especially with new brass, is there's no lubricant in the neck, right? So you can actually crush new brass if you don't lube the necks on the inside. So we use Hornady One Shot. Even on new brass, we actually full length size it and lube it. And part of the whole process is just to make sure that none of the necks are deformed, put everything back into good shape again, get everything consistent, and then also to make sure we get a little bit of that lube in the neck area so the bullet has something right on. Because clean, brand new brass and brand new jacketed bullets don't like to slide across each other all that well. And so that can create an issue. You can get bullets that are undersized. You can get bullets that are oversized. You can get cases that are annealed differently. You can get inside of a batch. You can get soft brass, which, for example, like some of your manufacturers that manufacture ammunition, their brass is pretty soft. One of the reasons why it's so consistent and accurate, but it doesn't last long for reloads, like 2 to 3 reloads, and you got to throw it away. So when you start talking to new shooters and you're trying to understand, well, he was using an expander ball or he was opening the necks up, right? But he wasn't running them through whatever full-length sizing. That the list of things that he was doing was like a hodgepodge of things that someone who's a simple reloader would do to advanced techniques that bench rest shooters would do and everything in between. He had all the good intentions, but the problem is he was looking at 5 different roadmaps, right? He was looking at, like, think about the simple reloader. It's just sizing, full-length sizing die, putting a primer in, throwing the charges, heating the bullet, right? That's your simple reloader. Consider that like your SUV off-road. Well, you're looking at a map that's an off-road map, right? You look at the guys that are running race cars on racetracks, right? Their roads or the process that they would go through from annealing, right? Annealing the necks to weight and sorting their brass to squaring up their primer pockets to opening up the flash holes to, I can just list all these things that their techniques are quite different, although they're still driving a vehicle, right? when you start to try to merge all of these things that you read online together, from advanced hand loading and PRS, competition shooting, and just to your grandfather saying, look, just dump powder in there and put a bullet on it and let's go shoot, right? When you start getting a new shooter doing all of these techniques at once, it makes a list of things, of potential problems, that just completely blows my mind. So when he was saying he's trying to say, okay, well, how do I solve this problem? My answer to him was, in the end, after about 20 or 25 minutes, that you can't get there from here. You're not going to solve the problem with us talking over the phone. If you came in and I was able to go to your bench and walk through every part and piece of what you're doing, we might be able to figure it out. It might take a day, right? It might take us of going and shooting and coming back and inspecting things. There's a million things, but at that point, I had to stop and say, there's nothing else that we can talk about, because you're doing so many things and you've got so many variables that pulling one out at a time, as I keep asking him more and more questions, I'm learning more and more things that he's doing that introduces more and more variables. You almost have an impossible task of trying to remove and going through every possible scenario of what he's doing and what could potentially be causing the issues, right? And being a new reloader, he doesn't have the experience to be able to go online of all of these things he's trying to do to build better accuracy, to separate out what is witchcraft or magic stuff that people are doing that are miraculously getting, quarter-inch groups at 100 yards over and over again. You almost have to look through that stuff as to whether or not it's true and whether or not it really works. And new shooters fall vulnerable to this all the time. And it's just putting too many ingredients in. You've got too many things in the air to juggle all at once, and you just don't know what you're falling short on because you don't have any experience to find it. And so I had to stop him, and I'm like, you can't get there from here. You're not going to solve this problem. Here's what you need to do. The first thing, before we talk about any more of all these things that you're doing with your reloading, right? And by the way, the fact that he was running this fast and he ran at a couple matches and was getting loose primers as a new shooter was telling me that he's not disciplined enough. I almost wanted to lecture him and say, look, you shouldn't, if you knew you were running hot or you knew you were running faster than what you should, why did you load up and go to the match? Why didn't you stop shooting and figure out what the problem is? Why did you shoot 2 more matches since then and still not address the problem? So that tells me that not only, not disciplined as a new shooter, but potentially not safe, right? Complacency and saying, well, I guess I'll just give it a try. I should be fine. That should be fine could cost you. It could cost you a lot. Besides an embarrassment of damaging your rifle, right? It could cost you your life. It could cost somebody beside you getting hit with shrapnel. Think of the 5-year-old or 10-year-old or 15-year-old sitting there with their dad on the next bench over when your gun comes flying apart. Don't think this stuff doesn't happen. And so the simple fact is, as I kept asking him more and more questions, my question was, well, why did you continue shooting it if you knew you were hot? You should have stopped. A lot of guys won't. They have a load that's shooting decent. Well, I just push it. It's fine. Yeah, it's fine till it's not. And then when it's not fine, it's catastrophically not fine, right? And so I almost didn't want to help them in some ways because I don't like working with people that don't have the discipline to know when to stop. I remember one time we were at a show out, and it was the last NRA annual we went to, and Bruce was with me, Thom from Bat Machine, and he's helping out with the show, and this guy come up and, and some people at shows are hard to deal with anyway, by the way, I'm a people person. I love talking guns. I love talking shooting. I love talking reloading, and I'm not judgmental, but I don't sacrifice safety, right? So this guy walked up to me at the show and he was like, hey, dude, and I hate being called dude, right? He's like, we your 308s handle 80,000 PSI or 90,000 PSI. And I'm looking at him. I already know what he's doing. He's shooting F-class. And those guys shooting FDR class just pushed the daylights out of 308s, trying to get 300 Win Mag velocities out of. And sorry, I blew the guy off. I didn't even answer his question. I'm like, hey, you just need to keep walking. And I didn't mean it to come off the way that it did. But I ain't building that guy a rifle. I'd never talk to the guy. And you're trying to win through pushing this massive amount of pressure through a gun that eventually winds up blowing a gun up, right? And which we're tied to. So why would I even give you the time of day? You're a risk taker, and the fact that not only are you putting yourself at risk in harm's way, you're putting those shooting around you at risk, which for me is doubly offensive, right? So Bruce looked at me funny because, we've known each other for decades. He's like, "You all right?" And I was like, "Yeah, why?" He goes, "I sort of a little short with that guy." And I was like, "Well," I said, "I'm sorry if it really appeared that way. Maybe I didn't mean to, right? But I can't stand that." And for me, when people approach shooting and reloading that way, or when they share it that way, they don't realize they're actually putting people at risk. Serious risk. And so for me, I just blew the guy off because there's other people there to talk to that I was interested in talking with that were shooters and sportsmen. And that person, I would never give him the time of day to do anything for him. I wouldn't build him a rifle. I wouldn't care how much money he would offer me. If you're running rifles that hot and you're being that irresponsible, I just don't want nothing to do with you. So when we started talking to this young gentleman, just as we kept going down this road, and the fact that he not only knew he was running hot, but continued to shoot it that way while he was trying to problem solve, was like me pumping the brakes right there, saying, "Okay, listen, there is a lot going on here, and all of the reloading stuff that we have talked about really is just you are taking everything from every sport and you're combining it together, and you're trying to do, with the best intentions, everything that you think you should do to make world-class ammo. But you're also a novice reloader that doesn't have the experience to know any or recognize when things get wrong." It's like this, like a world-class machinist isn't someone who knows how to do something. He knows how and what it sounds like when something's going wrong or not working correctly. He's recognizing the problems before they become a problem. So, for example, he's sitting in the office or he's working by a machine and all of a sudden it makes a funny sound and he literally jumps out of his skin, grabbing the stop button or whatever he's doing. He has the experience to recognize when things are going wrong, knows what they look like, and knows what to look for. And that's the problem with new reloaders is they don't have the experience to know what is right or wrong. They only know the process. They don't see or know what's behind the curtain, as well as to problem solve when these things happen. So my suggestion to him is go out and buy factory ammunition and shoot the gun and chronograph it and see if you've got the magic rifle that has an extra 200 feet per second attached to it. Maybe you do, but you're not going to resolve it by, changing powders. You don't know if it's your powder, your brass, your dyes, where you're storing your powder. There's all these things that it could be, right? So stop trying to solve the problem with your reloading because you don't know which part of it could be the problem, and just start very simple with taking factory ammunition out, chronographing it and seeing if it's normal, right? If it's close to what the box says. Granted, you might have a 22 or 26 inch barrel, but obviously he's picking up 200 and some feet per second as per our conversation. That's a lot of speed, It takes several grains of powder to get anywhere close to that, right? So just my advice to you here, and there's a couple of things I was going with this podcast, is sometimes you get so far down this rabbit hole that you've got nowhere else you can go. Simply, you've gone down so far that the only thing you can do is stop, come back to the word go or start from scratch, and then reconsider all the processes from scratch. Think about keeping it simple. One of the things that's always been an issue in trying to teach reloading is trying to downplay all the advanced stuff that you see people talk about. Think about reloading online. Like a lot of people have this secret thing that they won't tell you that they do, or they want to impress you with knowledge that they know of these secret things that they've learned that gets them that extra point. And so it's hard for new shooters to separate fact from fiction, perceived gains that really they're not seeing for real on the targets, and these are gains that they get in their mind. Maybe just a confidence booster, but really in reality, for new shooters, causes or opens the doors up for more problems than not. I guess my advice to him was just straight up, stop everything that you're doing, put everything on hold, go buy factory ammo. Then start from scratch, all brand new, in as simple as a process with all new components, checking for the little things that I was talking about that can cause you these griefs. I think for me, keeping it simple, stupid, that whole KISS thing that you hear people say, with reloading, this is a big deal. I think when people come into a reloading class that we hold here, we've had people come through that have been reloading for 20, 30 plus years, right? And I share with them the same approach, how we make all of our ammunition here. And I think the one gentleman had said that we have debunked and basically shredded everything that he thought he knew over the last 10 years and all the hype and had he taken our class 20 years ago, would have saved him thousands and thousands of dollars of all of these other things he's doing. And we have customers sometimes egg us on, like they're brand new to us. They don't know, how we do our reloading. And they'll be like, so tell me about all these things that you do, when it comes to making your ammunition. And they want to hear all the horror stories of how hard it is and all these problems that we have to overcome. And I simply tell them we don't have anything like that, right? That very simple approach of just making beautiful ammunition is not hard. It's hard when we want to do micro changes to how the processes are done or modified, because anything you do outside of just full-length sizing brass and seeding primers and throwing powder and seeding bullets with some tricks, right? Anything you do, there's a yin and yang effect to every single thing you add to the mix. It's an ingredient for a recipe, right? Every time you add something else in there, it can have a good effect and it can also have a bad effect somewhere else down the line. So there is a yin and yang to everything that you do when you reload. And people always just see the good part, right? Well, I'm going to seek for my best standard deviation. And that's great, but it's still part of the recipe, right? And so you do these modifications to your cases to get better standard deviation, but now your bullets are pushing in your pocket, or they're falling out, or you're holding them too tight, or 2 or 3 reloads from now, you've got inconsistent neck tensions and things go to hell in a handbag again. So I just want to throw it out there that, like in his case, you can't get there from here. I meant it. He was so far lost down this map of all these different types of vehicles and terrain that he was just trying to ride in. And, he was using an off-road map, a street racing map, all these different things, and trying to make this best ammunition out of the best of everything he could find, that he's so far lost that it basically, you're better off to rip everything up that throw it in the garbage, come back out, welcome to the daylight, wipe your eyes, look at the sun, be like, wow, look at that, and then start again. But this time, simply open a reloading manual with brand new components and follow the process that they give you. It actually works really, really well. So when people come to the reloading classes that we've held here in the past, is finding new loads. I knock on wood, maybe I'm just the luckiest guy in the world when it comes to finding great loads for rifles. I don't think it is. I think our approach is so simple and clean. I think how we approach reloading, the research that we do prior to selecting components, the processes that we use are proven. And my God, usually within a 1 or 2 range trips, we already got a great working load, and we're just fine tuning it a little bit while we move along. And for me, reloading is a necessary part of what we do, right? I don't like to reload. I don't get into shooting just so I can rub my hands and go down and make ammunition, right? I make ammunition so I can shoot. And so I want to make that process as clean, consistent, and as simple as possible to get the quality results that I want. Nothing more, nothing less. I also want to make sure that I'm safe and everyone around me is safe as well. So we don't do crazy. So before we continue on the podcast, I do want to say a quick thank you to one more of our sponsors. I want to thank MDT. They're a maker of fine rifle chassis. They just released a couple more that are coming out. Everything from the JAE 700 or J Allen to the ACC Elite to the Timber to the Oryx chassis, which, by the way, we still say is one of the best unsung heroes for chassis on the market. And just a lot of good options. So getting a stock that fits you well and is fully adjustable is really important to becoming an accurate shooter or to getting the most from your rifle. So one of the best ways you can do this is to upgrade a stock that fits you well and is fully adjustable. And MDT has lots of great stock options to look at. So whether you're shooting custom or factory, you can stop over to mdttac.com. That's mdttac.com and see what they have available today. All right, so my suggestion is this. We've taught lots of reloading classes over the last several years, and I really do enjoy them. And we walk through the processes twice of making ammunition here at our facility, going through the processes, right? But I also feel that there's a big responsibility on teaching it. Like I wouldn't turn it over to anybody and say, here, you're going to come and teach a reloading class. Here's the book, because they really don't have the experience or the know-how of how to get the information to the clients or the things that we're talking about. They will be teaching from a book for the subject rather than from experience on the subject. Just like we did with our long-range shooting school, is we're going to have a reloading course. And so you can sign up, you can go through our processes, just see what we're doing. Use it or not. We think we got a really, really good process of how we make not just super high quality ammunition, but how we make good, consistent ammunition. And we've been doing it for decades. I mean, we probably have loaded hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of rounds. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I mean, just our shooting schools require us to reload 10, 12, 18,000 rounds a year sometimes. So when it comes to making lots of ammunition and accurate, we actually have and been doing it for a really long time and long time before that. So we just have the experience to share with you all of the things that we've learned over the years that made a difference, things that have improved our quality of ammunition, things that made it simpler and easier. And so we're going to offer a class for this. And I just don't want to throw out that, hey, here's all these problems, and we're not going to share with you how to fix it. But what I will say to do is, last piece of advice, and then we'll give some quick updates here, is always go back to basics. Always go back and open up that reloader's manual, whether it's Hornady's reloading manual, Hodgkin's sells they have a book they put out every year. Redding, I mean, everybody has one. Open it up, and in the front of every single one of those manuals is a step-by-step process written out on how to make great ammunition. If you follow that process, the odds are you're going to have much better, consistent results. And if you start going on the internet and reading all of these crazy things, crazy tools, crazy processes that you're seeing people do, some of which are dangerous. So skip that part, go back to basics, and start from scratch with all brand new components. Ask the questions as far as how, just little things, right? On how you store powder, where you properly store it at. Do you size your cases when they're brand new? Some tricks when it comes to how to make sure that you're getting the bullet in the case in a timely manner, that you don't have spring back with the neck. There's all kinds of little things that we're going to get to share with you. But we're not going to just throw out there that, hey, here's a problem. Good luck. We're actually going to address it. And we've done it with the reloading classes that we've held in person here. Reloading is an important part of the equation. If you're going to get out there and shoot a lot, you're probably going to make your own ammunition, or you're going to learn to. It saves a lot of money. You're going to make high quality ammunition. You get to control a lot of the components and select the components, which is just as important. So it's an important part of having a rifle and shooting it at a higher level. And we don't want to downplay that. And a lot of it was just motivated yesterday from this phone call. It's like, look, we have to get this information out there, because there are a lot of people out there that just don't know how to weed through the bushes and get themselves in trouble with stuff like this all the time. The gentleman that we talked to yesterday was just a perfect case in point. To go over some quick updates, we are really excited that we'll be announcing all of our 2024 dates that will be coming up at the end of July. So all of our shooting schools for next year. We have a couple more slots open for September and October for this year. Then that'll be it for the 2023 shooting season. We do have a shooting school kicking off this weekend. We're looking forward to it. Ought to be some really nice weather, some great people coming in. Looking forward to spending time with them here at the range. Don't be afraid to stop over to our online long-range shooting school. We are now up and over 14 hours of content. You can register for that at Patreon or at wolfprecision.net, and you can log on and sign up and enjoy almost the first full 2 days of our in-person class from the convenience and comfort of your own home. So if you want to learn more about our online long-range shooting school, you can stop over to wolfprecision.net. That's wolfprecision.net. We also like to give a quick shout out and thank you to everybody that signed up for the Wolf Pack. So if you enjoy the podcast, you like to support the show, you can stop over to Patreon. Just look for Wolf Precision. And for $3 a month, you can support the show. We certainly appreciate that. Thank you everybody who's signed up and done that as well. Also, don't be afraid to stop over and check out our sponsors or our advertisers. By the way, we don't let anyone advertise on the podcast. That is a product that we do not use. We have lots of companies that ask us all the time if they can insert their product into our show. And our first rule of thumb is, unless we use it as something that we believe in, we certainly aren't influencers that we're just going to be out here selling everybody stuff and telling you that everything's great and here's a promo code. So any type of advertiser that we bring on, we really want you to know that this is stuff that we use regularly, and we believe in their quality of their product long before we ever ask them if they would like to participate in our podcast as well. So thank you so much, everybody, for taking the time to join us. If you enjoy the podcast, please like it. And if you'd like to leave a comment on any of the stations that you're listening to it on, we really appreciate that. That helps us out a lot. If you're into this type of shooting and you know somebody else that is, and you like to share the podcast, we certainly appreciate that as well, too. That helps us out a lot in our ratings. So thank you, everybody, for taking the time to join us here on the show. In the next podcast, we're going to be talking about the 308, and we're going to be bringing Richard back on and get his 2 cents or 3 on the 308, its history, and its viability as a great shooting cartridge of choice still for 2023. So thank you, everybody, for taking the time to join us here at the show. My name is Jamie Dotson. I'm your host, and you're listening to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building Podcast.